Hello, everyone, and welcome to our live coverage of the latest mission from Cape Canaveral Space Force Station. I'm Will Robinson Smith, reporter with Spaceflight Now. It's good to see you this evening on Sunday, the 14th. We are broadcasting, as we always do, from the Spaceflight Now News Bureau here at NASA's Kennedy Space Center. And we come on air with you on a quite blustery evening here across Florida's Space Coast, as SpaceX is hoping the winds will cooperate enough to allow it to fly its Falcon 9 rocket on a mission to deploy 29 Starlink V2 mini optimized satellites into low Earth orbit. Falcon 9 will take a southeasterly turn once it leaves the pad. Right now, winds are providing a challenge coming from the north, which is the exact wrong direction that SpaceX would want in order to try and fly its Falcon 9 rocket on a southeasterly trajectory from this particular pad. As SpaceX is coming into this final hour before the planned liftoff, a strong wind warning and wind advisory are both issued for both the Cape and KSC. As you might have seen with our tracker camera, we're holding things down as best we can. Got all the sandbags deployed. Adam did a stellar job, supported by our fellow photographer John Pisani, making sure the cameras aren't going to blow away in all this wind. But if you see a little bit more camera shake throughout the broadcast, we've done our level best to make sure things are as steady as possible. But we are, like SpaceX, a bit at the mercy of Mother Nature for this one. As we're counting down right now, we're about 57 and a half minutes remaining to the current T0 time of 10:14 p.m. Eastern, 0314 UTC for our friends joining around the world. Speaking of our friends around the world, we are glad to see about 500 of you who are watching with us live as we're kicking things off this evening. If you haven't already, you could do us a big favor just by clicking that like button and sharing the stream. Allows more folks to find their way into this live launch coverage. I want to thank our moderators in the chat who are helping us out tonight. So we've got Jeff Hansen holding it down alongside Rick Donner and Astro Joe. If you do see any of the other mods cruise on in throughout the course of the broadcast, be sure to give them a big old Spaceflight Now hello. You can help the mods make their job that much easier just by following our rules of the chat. We ask that you post your message in English so that the moderators can respond as appropriate. Also, that you hold off from delving into overt politics or religion, and we ask that you do not post your message in all caps. Emojis are perfectly fine. We just ask that you don't create a huge block of them, i.e., like 3 or 4 lines of emoji text. So that way other people can see their message and post theirs as well. Last but not least, we ask that you treat each other with the kindness and respect that you yourself would like to be treated, and we'll all get along swimmingly. One of our channel members also with us this evening, Cumulus Granatus, is able to help answer folks' questions in the chat as we go on through the count. Speaking of channel members, this and every other live launch opportunity are made possible in no small part thanks to our wonderful channel members here on YouTube. So thanks to folks like Butterfly, Kylie, Rocket Girl, Viper 3378, Jeff Quintrall, Bill in Lauderdale, and many, many others. Channel membership comes with a number of perks, including discounts at our online shop, which is shop.spaceflightnow.com. Access to member-only videos here on YouTube, access to our members-only Discord server, and of course the ability to watch all of our live launch liftoff moments from here in Florida in 4K. Mr. John Pisani is our man in the chair tonight, running the technical operations of the broadcast, assisted by our Spaceflight Now editor, Stephen Young. Photographer Adam Bernstein out and about, again, making sure all the cameras are anchored down as best we can, and we'll be tracking tonight's launch. If you're not following our photographers on X, you can find them at their handles here on your screen. Adam is at ABurnNYC. John is at John Pisani Photo. Michael Kane is at MD Kane Jr. And while you're there, be sure to follow Spaceflight Now simply at Spaceflight Now. You can find us on Threads, Blue Sky, and Facebook as well. The team also spent part of this weekend getting prepared for what was supposed to be the early Monday morning pre-dawn launch of a United Launch Alliance Atlas V rocket from Space Launch Complex 41 here at the Cape. However, the weather that has delayed the launch of SpaceX's other Falcon 9 rocket from Pad 40, or from Pad 39A at the Kennedy Space Center, I should say, indications are that it may be the weather, but we haven't got specific word from SpaceX yet, but that launch has been pushed off. Meanwhile, we do have specific word from United Launch Alliance that their Atlas V was unable to launch because of wind conditions tomorrow morning. There's a cold front that moved in, has been providing blustery conditions. You can see the clouds streaming down from the north across the Florida Panhandle here. This visual imagery from the GOES East satellite from NOAA. You can see their part of their icon in the bottom left-hand corner of the screen. Coming into this launch opportunity, because of that front, meteorologists forecast long odds for this particular flight. Looking at a 70% chance, the probability of violating weather constraints, or put another way, just a 30% chance for favorable launch conditions for SpaceX tonight. Winds were forecast to be gusting, or to be between 28 and 36 miles per hour. As we know, there's a chance for stronger gusts as well. The booster recovery weather also listed as a potential watch item for tonight on a low to moderate scale, on a or low to moderate risk level on a scale of low to moderate to high. If it turns out that SpaceX is unable to launch tonight, the odds of good weather at the pad increase dramatically, going from 30% chance for good weather tonight to a 95% chance for good weather on Monday evening, with just the cumulus cloud rule coming into play. However, the booster recovery weather in that 24-hour turnaround opportunity does degrade quite a bit, going from a low to moderate risk tonight to a moderate to high risk tomorrow. So, bit of a trade-off for SpaceX. They try to go ahead with the winds being what they are tonight, knowing that the booster recovery weather is better this evening, or do they pivot to their backup opportunity tomorrow, but face longer odds with the booster recovery weather? Time will tell, and we'll be here with you for all of the potential changes. But right now, SpaceX is continuing to move towards that current T0 liftoff. Actually, I spoke, unfortunately, too soon. We have a new time. We are adjusting our clock. SpaceX has readjusted their clock. They are roughly 2 hours, 25 minutes away from the next liftoff attempt. We are adjusting our clock. The time will be 11:49 for the new T0. For those of you who are just joining us, SpaceX has adjusted the T0 time for tonight's mission, Starlink 6-82. They were targeting 10:14 p.m. Eastern. New T0 is now 11:49 p.m. Eastern. As you can see on the clock, we are currently T minus 2 hours, 22 minutes, 28 seconds. With the delay in the T0, we're going to step back on make the commentary a little bit lighter until we get closer to the final hour before the planned liftoff, but we'll leave our mics up to let you listen to the sounds of the Merritt Island National Wildlife Refuge. Of course, leave you with the sights of the Falcon 9 rocket from various camera perspectives. We'll pop in periodically over the next hour or so, give you updates, especially if the T0 changes again. But for now, we'll leave you with the sounds of nature as you're watching Spaceflight Now's live coverage of the Starlink 6-82 mission, currently targeting a liftoff just about 11 minutes before midnight. We're now at T minus 2 hours and counting to the current T0 time that SpaceX adjusted to. Currently counting to planned liftoff of this Falcon 9 rocket at Space Launch Complex 40 at 11:49 p.m. Eastern, 04:49 UTC. For those of you joining us a little bit into this broadcast, SpaceX did push back their planned launch time from the previously advertised 10:14 as they are facing some challenging conditions with the amount of wind coming through the area and perhaps just as importantly, the direction it's coming from, with it being directed from the north. SpaceX will attempt to launch the Starlink 6-82 mission if it's able to find a calm enough period leading up to liftoff. 29 Starlink V2 Mini optimized satellites are on board this particular Falcon 9 rocket, which is set to be the company's 580th Falcon 9 rocket launch to date. This will also be the 163rd of the year so far. With a long delay to the planned liftoff, we're doing a little bit of flighter commentary in this first part of the broadcast. We'll pick things up a little bit more like usual as we get into the final hour before T0. But in the interim, we'll go ahead and bring our mics back up to allow you to listen to the sounds and enjoy the sights of the Merritt Island National Wildlife Refuge as SpaceX encounters some windy conditions trying to launch the Starlink 6-82 mission. Watching live coverage from Spaceflight now. time now. Currently T minus 1 hour, 45 minutes and counting. Local time here, just a few minutes past the 10 o'clock hour on the East Coast, roughly 10 minutes from the original launch time as we were coming on the air earlier this evening. SpaceX, for those of you who may have just popped into the live stream, has adjusted the T0 to now be currently targeting liftoff at 11:49 p.m. Eastern, 04:49 UTC. SpaceX does still have some wiggle room in its launch window tonight, but with each adjustment, of course, that time does dwindle. Teams are hoping to launch a batch of 29 Starlink V2 mini satellites into low Earth orbit tonight. Still have a couple of hours to make further adjustments, but the wind conditions as forecast are not expected to dramatically improve, but we'll, of course, continue to watch and see how things shape up in actuality as opposed to the original forecast issued yesterday. As we continue on in this extra hour preview or ahead of final hour before the planned liftoff, we're going to be doing a little bit of lighter commentary, but checking in periodically. And of course, if there are any updates to the T0 time, we will let you know about those just as quickly as we possibly can. For now, though, we'll let you continue watching the sights of the Falcon 9 rocket from our various camera perspectives and listening to the sounds of a very windy night here on Florida's Space Coast. You're watching Spaceflight Now's live coverage of the Starlink 6-82 mission. Time now is T minus 1 hour, 30 minutes on the clock as SpaceX continues to count down towards its current T0 liftoff time for the Falcon 9 rocket standing there at Space Launch Complex 40. Current departure time 11:49 p.m. Eastern, 04:49 UTC, with the rocket set to fly on a southeasterly trajectory once it's able to leave the pad. As you can hear through our mics, it is a quite windy night here on the Space Coast, with meteorologists forecasting just a 30% chance for acceptable weather conditions for a liftoff during SpaceX's launch opportunity. If needed, there are still a couple more hours available to them to make adjustments to the T0. So this is far from the end of their launch campaign here tonight. If they do need to make additional adjustments, we will, of course, bring that information to you as quickly as possible. For now, though, as we're still about 30 minutes ahead of the final, as things currently stand, planned hour before liftoff, we are continuing in our lighter commentary posture. So we will continue to allow you to listen primarily to the sights and sounds of the Merritt Island National Wildlife Refuge, Cape Canaveral Space Force Station here on your screens. You're watching Spaceflight Now's live coverage of the Starlink 6-82 mission. Time currently T minus 1 hour, just under 1 hour, 15 minutes to the planned liftoff of the Falcon 9 rocket from Space Launch Complex 41. The clock continues to tick down as SpaceX targets planned liftoff at 11:49 p.m. Eastern, 04:49 UTC for our friends joining around the world. Windy conditions are certainly making things challenging for SpaceX tonight, but since the most recent adjustment to the T0 from 10:14 p.m. Eastern to 11:49, we haven't seen the clock jump again, but we are keeping a close eye on that, and we'll let you know about any further adjustments as they arise, if they arise, I should say. In the meantime, want to welcome in some new channel members here on the YouTube channel. Welcome aboard to Blunder12, user blocks on profile, Liz Ramsey J5R, Michael Douglas Sharper, Hyun Gran Kim, and Christy Wright joining us all at the pad leader level. Welcome aboard to all of you. We're glad to have you with us. As a reminder, channel membership comes with a number of perks, including discounts at our online shop, which is shop.spaceflightnow.com, access to member-only videos here on YouTube, access to our members-only Discord server, and the ability to watch our live launch liftoff moments from here in Florida in 4K. Also, a big thank you to John Boltic for the $5 super chat, as well as to Jeff Quintrall. Some very kind words saying, let's donate, keep this site funded. We certainly appreciate if you are able to help out through the YouTube super chat feature, but we also just appreciate those of you who are able to tune in as often as you are. Our thanks as well to Backwater526 for the $5 super chat. Again, we're continuing on in this lighter commentary posture until we are within 1 hour, once again, to the planned liftoff of this Falcon 9 rocket, which is coming up pretty soon, barring another T0 adjustment. You're watching Spaceflight Now's live coverage of the Starlink 6-82 mission from Cape Canaveral Space Force Station. Time currently T-minus 1 hour and counting to the planned launch of the Starlink 6-82 mission from Space Launch Complex 40 at Cape Canaveral Space Force Station. For those of you who may just be joining us now at this point in the broadcast, I'm reporter Will Robinson Smith with Spaceflight Now. SpaceX is currently counting down to a planned liftoff of its Falcon 9 rocket at 11:49 p.m. Eastern, 04:49 UTC. Weather has been the challenge coming into this mission, and things continue to be quite blustery here on the Space Coast. Looking down from a satellite view from NOAA's Goes East satellite, you can see some clouds streaming across the Florida Peninsula, especially right here over the Cape itself. If SpaceX needs to make further adjustments, they do still have a couple of hours beyond the current plan T0 with which to maneuver, so plenty of time to pivot if that is the decision that they go with. But for now, clock continues to tick down with just under 59 minutes remaining. Looking back at our live chat here, want to thank the roughly 850 of you who are hanging tough with us this evening. If you haven't already, you could do us a big favor just by clicking that like button and sharing the stream to allow some more folks to find their way into this live launch coverage tonight. Also want to thank our newest channel member, Lewis L7I5P, joining us with membership at the pad leader level, and then immediately upgrading their membership to the mission specialist level. Certainly appreciate all of our channel members, and for those of you who are able to support us at the higher levels, it helps us to keep our base level membership at its current price point. And thanks to channel member Bill in Lauderdale for the $5 super chat, who says, this for the mods, thank you for all you do, launch or no launch. And we certainly hope at the end of this evening we do wrap up this broadcast by denoting another SpaceX launch. This current mission in the slate of things is SpaceX's 580th Falcon 9 rocket to date, if this launch is able to move forward. Looking at the 515th launch of a booster that has flown at least once as well. Falcon booster tail number 1092 is supporting the Starlink 6-82 mission, a flight of 29 Starlink V2 Mini optimized satellites into low Earth orbit. Tonight's launch of this Falcon 9 booster 1092 doesn't quite put it up into the category of the most flown SpaceX boosters, our Falcon 9 frequent flyers as we term them. Here's where the list currently stands on those. The next upcoming flight from here in Florida will feature another relatively new booster for SpaceX B1094 that's supporting the Starlink 6-99 mission from over at Pad 39A. Things currently quiet over at Launch Complex 39A as we're awaiting the emergence of the Falcon 9 rocket there at that pad. Originally, this launch was scheduled for tomorrow morning, but as things currently stand, that launch is listed as TBD or actually now that has been updated, SpaceX currently targeting no earlier than 7:45 a.m. Eastern for a launch from this particular pad on the morning of Tuesday, December 16th. That will come in the hours following the planned flight of an Atlas V rocket from Space Launch Complex 41. That will support the flight of 27 of what were formerly known as Amazon's Project Kuiper satellites, now referred to as Amazon LEO. And we do have a new T0. We're updating our clocks. 12:08 is the new time. 12:08 a.m. Eastern. 05:08 UTC. We are once again at T-minus 1 hour and counting to the planned liftoff of this Falcon 9 rocket, supporting the Starlink 6-82 mission from Cape Canaveral Space Force Station. As you've been hearing from our mics here at the Kennedy Space Center press site, the winds have very much not died down, at least from an auditory standpoint, as SpaceX hopes to find an acceptable amount of adverse weather to allow them to launch their Falcon 9 rocket from Space Launch Complex 40 tonight. Current T0 has SpaceX departing pad 40 at the Cape at 12:08 a.m. Eastern, 05:08 UTC for our friends around the world. Again, SpaceX still has some wiggle room in their launch window today, so if further adjustments are warranted, which given the amount of wind this evening would not be shocking, they still have a little bit of latitude remaining. As we're awaiting the departure of this Falcon 9 rocket, let's talk a little bit more about where it's going to be flying once it does leave the pad. Talking a little trajectory here. After lifting off from the pad, the Falcon 9 rocket will fly on a southeasterly trajectory, with the first stage booster set to separate from the upper stage less than 3 minutes after liftoff. It will target a touchdown on SpaceX's drone ship called a shortfall of gravitas. A successful booster landing tonight would represent the 137th good landing on this particular drone ship and the 551st good landing of a booster by SpaceX to date. In addition to recovering the first stage booster, SpaceX will also endeavor to recover the payload fairings, as the company wants to reuse both the booster and the fairings for up to 40 times. Following atmospheric reentry, each fairing half will make their splashdown in the waters of the Atlantic Ocean under the support of steerable parachutes. Once down in the water, they'll be brought aboard one of SpaceX's recovery vessels, like the one you see here on your screen, then brought through Port Canaveral, and it's off to the Hangar X site here at KSC, where they will be refurbished and turned around for future missions. Time now, T minus 53 minutes, 42 seconds and counting. Assuming a good launch here tonight, this will be the 120th launch of Starlink satellites so far in the year 2025. 29 of the Starlink V2 Mini optimized satellites are on board this particular Falcon 9 rocket, considerably lighter than the predecessor V2 Minis. With their solar panels unfurled, they have a wingspan of about 100 feet or 30 meters tip to tip. These satellites use Argon Hall effect thrusters for in orbit maneuvering. Built up in Redmond, Washington, these satellites will be deployed at about 168 miles or 271 kilometers in altitude at a 43-degree inclination. Just under 50 minutes as things currently stand. SpaceX continues to count down towards a planned liftoff at 12:08 a.m. Eastern, 05:08 UTC. Want to welcome in new channel member Doing Us Boo, joining us with membership at the Pad Leader level. Welcome aboard. We're glad to have you with us. With the clock still ticking at this point in time, let's go ahead and take a moment to talk about the countdown timeline for SpaceX, the milestones that we're looking forward to ahead of a good launch of the Falcon 9 rocket. Things will get going, of course, when the SpaceX launch director makes the determination that they are good to proceed into propellant load. Generally speaking, it happens at the T minus 38-minute mark. If SpaceX feels like they're in a good position, though, this can happen a little bit earlier than 38 minutes out. But once the go ahead for fueling is granted, tanking of the Falcon 9 rocket will begin at T minus 35 minutes with the loading of RP1, a rocket grade kerosene, on board the Falcon 9's first and second stages. At the same time, liquid oxygen will begin to flow on board the Falcon 9 booster. Half an hour before liftoff, teams will start to load cryogenic helium onto the pressure vessels for the Falcon 9's first stage. Same will be true on the second stage a few minutes after that. The helium is important because it's used to pressurize the main propellant tanks during flight. The T minus 23 minutes, second stage RP1 loading will wrap up. Then at T minus 20 minutes and 50 seconds is when the strong back chill down process gets underway. At this point in the count, SpaceX is thermally conditioning the feed lines at the pad prior to loading liquid oxygen on board the rocket's upper stage. We'll see this visually manifest as the so-called big vent, which begins at about T minus 20 minutes and 20 seconds, lasting roughly 4 minutes in duration. Once that cuts off, SpaceX will turn next to loading that LOX on the upper stage, beginning at the 16-minute mark. Moving right along at T minus 7 minutes is when the chill down of the 9 Merlin engines at the base of the booster begins. SpaceX flows a small amount of liquid oxygen through the plumbing and turbo pumps. That helps to protect those engines from the risk of thermal shock and damage during startup. 6 minutes before a liftoff, the first stage kerosene tank is full. Then at T minus 4.5 minutes, we'll see the retraction of the strong back. First, the clamp arms just beneath the payload fairings will open up, and then the transporter erector, otherwise referred to as the strong back, will recline a few degrees away from the Falcon 9 rocket. It stays in that position until liftoff. At that point, it'll pull back in a much more rapid fashion to clear the way for the vertical climb of the Falcon 9. 3 minutes before takeoff, the first stage liquid oxygen tank is full. Same is true on the second stage, about a minute after that. At that point, the Falcon 9 is fully loaded with 1 million pounds of propellant. In the final 60 seconds, as we hear the call that the Falcon 9 has entered into its automated startup, control of the countdown is handed over from the ground sequencer to the Falcon 9's onboard flight computers. At the same time, the propellant tanks are brought up to flight pressure. SpaceX launch director will confirm that they are in fact go for launch at T minus 45 seconds. The engine ignition command will be issued at T minus 3 seconds, and if all 9 Merlin engines are healthy and ignite as expected, the command will be given for the hold down clamps to release the Falcon 9 rocket for a T0 liftoff. Once again, currently targeting 12:08 a.m. Eastern, 05:08 UTC for those around the world, or just about T minus 45 minutes and counting. just about 41 and a half minutes remaining on the clock towards the current T0 of 12:08 a.m. Eastern, 05:08 UTC. It appears SpaceX is in a hold, which suggests that they may be targeting a new T0 or making other adjustments, standing by for a new T0. Do have a new T0 now, 12:25 a.m. Eastern. 12:25 a.m. is our new current T0 for the Falcon 9 rocket. We are adjusting the clock. Stand by. For those of you just joining the broadcast, just about 50 and a half minutes currently on the clock to the current T0 time for SpaceX and the launch of the Starlink 6-82 mission. Current departure time set for 12:25 a.m. Eastern, 05:25 UTC. Want to welcome in new channel member Cody Hunt, joining us with membership at the pad leader level. And thanks to Cody for the dollar super chat. Also, thanks to channel member Bill in Lauderdale for the $5 super chat. It says, "Here's to the mods. Thank you for being here at this late hour and keeping everyone on their best behavior." Certainly do appreciate our mods and all that they do, helping to hold things down in the live chat with our broadcasts, especially at very odd hours. Just under 40 and a half minutes remaining on the clock at this juncture. Roughly 10 minutes until the point at which the SpaceX launch director will make the call on the start of prop load, or if, as we've been seeing throughout the course of the countdown tonight, if they will continue to punt further into their launch window. In the meantime, let's talk a little bit about the booster that is supporting this mission, the tail number 1092 in the SpaceX fleet. This will be the 9th flight for this Falcon 9 first stage. Its flight history began on February 27th of this year with the launch of the Starlink 12-13 mission, which lifted off from this pad that you see there on the right-hand side of your screen, Slick 40. That was followed up by a mission for the National Reconnaissance Office, the NROL 69 mission, launching on March 24th with a recovery over at Landing Zone 1. That was followed up by another LZ touchdown on April 21st when this booster launched the CRS-32 mission, or the 32nd of SpaceX's launches under the Commercial Resupply Services 2 contract with NASA, delivering cargo, science, and supplies up to the International Space Station. Also returning for a landing at LZ-1. That was followed up by a launch of one of the latest GPS satellites to enter into service, GPS-3 Space Vehicle number 8. Batch of Starlink satellites came up after that, the Starlink 10-34 mission, delivering 27 Starlink satellites into orbit on June 28th. That was followed up by the launch of the Boeing X-37B space plane on a mission also referred to as United States Space Force, or USSF 36, which launched on August 22nd. This booster's most recent missions were both batches of Starlink satellites. You had Starlink 10-61 on September 18th. That was followed up by Starlink 6-89 on November 15th. Looking for a 30-day turnaround for this booster if all goes well. Not the fastest between flights for this booster. That was back when it was between its first and second missions, and it was able to turn around in 25 days. Currently, the shortest turnaround time for a Falcon 9 first stage. Still, that distinction lies with the booster B1088, which has flown 12 times so far. It was able to fly again after the SphereX and Punch mission for NASA 9 days later to launch the NROL 57 mission. Both of those flying from Vandenberg Space Force Base and Space Launch Complex 4 East. Certainly helped that both of those missions had recoveries over at landing zone 4, so you didn't have the transit time with the booster on a drone ship. Also potentially helpful in that these were two missions launching on behalf of the U.S. government, one for NASA, the other for the NRO. Just about 43 and a half minutes on the clock, roughly 5 minutes to the approximate time at which the SpaceX launch director may be making the call for the start of prop load. In the meantime, I want to thank Skunk Hogger PS4 for the $10 super chat. Really appreciate that. Skunk says, think I'll turn in. The dogs are bedding down. Thanks, everyone. Will, our mods, and Cumulus Granatus for another nice evening. Certainly appreciate you stopping by and certainly understand the urge to turn in for the night. Of course, this is a school night and a work night for a lot of folks, so we are certainly understanding for those of you who are unable to stay up late with us, especially as the launch has slipped further than originally advertised. But as you can certainly hear with the wind, conditions have not very much improved, if any at all, with our current outlook towards launch opportunities tonight. But still, SpaceX persists, and so we too will persist until they either launch this rocket or call the ball game. 38 minutes and counting. At this point, the SpaceX launch director should have made a call on the start of prop load. At this singular moment in time, the clock still does appear to be ticking. Time now 36 minutes and counting. Given that the clock continues to move, it seems as though SpaceX may in fact be making a run at it with this current T0 of 12:25 a.m. Eastern, 05:25 UTC. If that is in fact the case, fueling of the rocket set to begin now in about 30 seconds. Just under 34 minutes in the count. Let's go ahead and punch a little closer on the Falcon 9 rocket. And again, there's not a lot we can do about the camera shake, folks. It has been quite windy throughout the night, and our cameras are as secure as they possibly can be. So apologies for all the not so good vibrations. But what we're watching for at this point is a frost line to start to form near the base of the Falcon booster, as assuming SpaceX is in fact fueling its rocket. Liquid oxygen is now flowing on board. The rocket's first stage should be forming a frost line. We may also see a little bit of vapor in that area of the booster as well. Again, aggressive shaking of the camera notwithstanding. And we are starting to see that frost line form on the Falcon 9 booster, which, against some long odds with the wind continuing as it is, certainly from a non meteorological or from the perspective of someone who's not a meteorologist, long weather odds. But SpaceX is fueling its Falcon 9 rocket, which means they are locked into that T0 at 12:25 a.m. Eastern, 05:25 UTC, which means either we will have a launch at that time or SpaceX will have to scrub some point between now and then. But with the tank in the Falcon 9 rocket, they'll take it as far as they possibly can. So we will see how this all plays out. Time is now T minus 23 minutes, 23 seconds and counting. SpaceX continues to fuel its Falcon 9 rocket there at Space Launch Complex 40 in the hopes of a flight amid a very windy evening here on, uh, well, now just a hair after midnight on Monday, December 15th, here on the East Coast. At this point in the count, SpaceX has started to load cryogenic helium onto the pressure vessels for both Falcon 9's first and second stages, and will use that helium to pressurize the main propellant tanks during flight. Coming up next will be the thermal conditioning of the feed lines there at the pad prior to loading liquid oxygen on board the rocket's second stage. We'll see this visually as the big vent, which is set to begin at about T minus 20 minutes and 20 seconds. So just about 2 minutes from now. Also, we're keeping an eye out for updates on the planned launch of Galactic Energy's Series 2 rocket from Japan, from China, originally scheduled to launch at 0410 UTC, but have not seen any confirmation that the launch did in fact happen. So we're keeping an eye out for that. If that mission did launch, and this mission, if that mission did launch and was successful, and this mission launches and is also successful, that would make this flight, Starlink 6-82, the 300th successful orbital launch in 2025. But again, that's all assuming that the two planned launches early this morning, as far as UTC time is concerned, on December 15th, both happen, and they both happen successfully. With a little less than 21 minutes on the clock, I want to welcome in new channel member April Marshall, joining us with membership at the Path Leader level. Welcome aboard, April. We're glad to have you with us. Blowing in the nearly opposite direction of us here, but the big vent is underway at the pad. Less than 20 minutes remaining till the planned launch attempt for Starlink 6-82. Just about 1 minute remaining left in the big vent here before SpaceX turns next to the loading of liquid oxygen on board the rocket's upper stage. With the big vent wrapped up, SpaceX at this point in the count should be loading liquid oxygen on board the upper stage of the Falcon 9. As we're waiting to see whether SpaceX will be able to launch here in the next 13 some odd minutes. Taking a quick peek at the live chat, seeing where folks are joining us from. Looks like Robert Combs joining us from Hawaii. Very jealous, never been. Let us know where you're watching from tonight. Of course, we have plenty of folks here in Florida. Let us know if you're a little bit closer to us here or if you're further flung. Looks like we've got Ray in Louisiana in the house. Mark Hammond joining us from the Rocket City up in Huntsville, North Carolina, Buffalo, New York, Utah, Melbourne, Australia. Always wonderful to see where our international audience is representing. As all of y'all continue to chime in, tonight's launch will be the 580th launch of a Falcon 9 rocket, weather permitting. Let's go ahead and talk about the workhorse vehicle for SpaceX, the Falcon 9 rocket, which stands at a height of 70 meters or 229 feet. The rocket has a diameter of 3.66 meters or 12 feet. Majority of that is represented by the booster. This particular first stage has the tail number 1092. It'll be making its 9th flight when it does launch. At the base of the first stage are 9 Merlin engines, which burn rocket-grade kerosene and liquid oxygen, producing 1.7 million pounds of thrust at liftoff. Around the engine compartment are black carbon fiber landing legs that will be used to land the first stage on the drone ship, a short fall of gravitas, about 8.5 minutes post liftoff. Above the first stage is the inner stage. This is a composite structure consisting of an aluminum honeycomb core, which is surrounded by carbon fiber. In the image on the right-hand side of your screen, you can see the deployable hypersonic grid fins. These are titanium winglets that provide stability and steering for the Falcon 9 as it comes back through the atmosphere, tail first like a big old dart heading towards the drone ship. At the top of the inner stage are 3 mechanical latches that attach the vehicle's second stage. In that first stage main engine cutoff, high-pressure helium is used to release those latches, and 4 pneumatic pushers ensure a clean separation. Also, the second stage engine nozzle is safely housed inside the inner stage adapter until the point of stage separation. Speaking of the second stage, the upper stage of the Falcon 9 is powered by a single modified Merlin engine, referred to as a Merlin vacuum engine or an MVAC engine. It's equipped with a large nozzle, which is optimized for burns in the vacuum of space, hence the name. It produces more than 220,500 pounds of thrust, and it will be fired twice on today's flight to place the 29 Starlink satellites into their intended orbit. Like with the first stage, the MVAC engine also burns the same propellant mix of RP1 and LOX. Following the deployment of the Starlink satellites, there will be one final burn, a deorbit burn, to drive the upper stage back into the atmosphere, where it's designed to burn up, helping to eliminate the risk of creating unnecessary space debris on this mission. Finally, at the top of the Falcon 9 stack are the payload fairings, currently encapsulating the Falcon 9 rocket, or encapsulating the 29 Starlink satellites at the top of the rocket. The fairing is made up of a carbon composite material and stands 13.1 meters or 43 feet in height, and together are 5.2 meters or 17.1 feet in diameter. Following fairing jettison, these two halves will make a splashdown in the waters of the Atlantic Ocean, a little bit further downrange from where the booster lands on the drone ship, a short fall of gravitas. Once down, they'll be brought aboard a recovery vessel, then off to Port Canaveral, then to the Hangar X site, where they will be refurbished and turned around for future missions. Since we talked about the trajectory with a little more specificity quite some time ago now, let's go ahead and give a refresh for folks who were not with us at that point in our broadcast. Falcon 9 rocket will be launching, weather permitting, from Space Launch Complex 40 there at Cape Canaveral Space Force Station. Current T0 is 12:25 a.m. Eastern, 0525 UTC. The rocket will fly on a southeasterly trajectory with the first stage booster targeting a touchdown on the drone ship called a short fall of gravitas to the east of the Bahamas. A good recovery today would mark the 551st good landing for a Falcon booster and the 137th for this particular vessel. And again, SpaceX does want to recover the fairing halves on this mission today as well. Just cruising into the final 7 minutes of the count. At this point, SpaceX will be flowing a small amount of liquid oxygen through the plumbing and turbo pumps. And that'll help to protect those 9 Merlin 1D engines from the risk of thermal shock and damage during startup. Less than 6.5 minutes on the board. I want to thank our moderator, Jeff Hansen, for the $10 super chat. Thank you, Jeff. Jeff says, go Cape, go SpaceX, go Falcon 9, go Starlink, Godspeed, 1092. 1092, of course, a reference to the booster flying today's mission, set to take flight for a 9th time. At this point in the count, 6 minutes out, the first stage RP-1 tank should be full. And in now less than a minute, we should be getting pad level views from the SpaceX as well as mission audio, which we will bring into our broadcast when available.
Falcon 9 tanks are pressing for the start of Strawback retract.
And as you heard and can now see, we're getting pad level views and mission audio from SpaceX. Strongback retract is about to begin.
Strongback retract has started.
Coming up shortly, we'll see the clamp arms just beneath the payload fairings open up, and then the transporter erector, otherwise referred to as the strongback, that will recline a few degrees away from the Falcon 9 rocket. You can see those arms now opening wide. T-minus 3 minutes and counting.
Stage 1 LOX load is complete.
Good call on stage 1 LOX load. We should hear a similar call regarding the second stage around the 2-minute mark. T-minus 2 minutes and counting.
Stage 2 LOX load is complete.
With that call, the Falcon 9 rocket is fully loaded with 1 million pounds of propellant. Momentarily, we should be seeing, there you go, some additional venting. Those are the ground gas closeouts.
Ground gas closeouts.
This is SpaceX releasing the remaining liquid oxygen from the feed lines there at the pad. Coming to the final minute of the count when the rocket should enter into its automated startup.
Falcon 9 has entered startup.
And now, if SpaceX is in fact ready to go, we should be hearing the SpaceX launch director make that confirmation momentarily.
Launch director, go for launch.
And with that call, SpaceX is now about 30 seconds away from launching its Falcon 9 rocket on this windy Monday morning. $15 seconds. And here we go in 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Engine ignition and liftoff. Liftoff of the Falcon 9 rocket on the Starlink 6-82 mission. The Falcon 9 has cleared the tower. Little more than a minute into flight now, the Falcon 9 rocket passing through max Q, point of greatest aerodynamic pressure on the vehicle.
MVAC chill has started.
Falcon 9 is on a nominal trajectory.
MECO.
Stage separation confirmed.
MVAC startup.
Good calls, good visuals. You can see the hypersonic grid fins deploying now on the booster. Fairing jettison is next.
Fairing separation confirmed.
And a good view of those 29 Starlink V2 Mini optimized satellites on this vehicle. Those fairing halves will be recovered as they make a splashdown in the waters of the Atlantic Ocean, a little bit further downrange from where the booster will land on the drone ship, a short fall of gravitas. Now approaching about 4.5 minutes into this mission. So far, all appears to be moving smoothly with this Falcon 9 flight. Coming up next will be the 3-engine entry burn. SpaceX begins to dramatically slow down the first stage booster. And we're less than a minute away now to the start of that entry burn.
Stage 1 entry burn startup.
Stage 1 FTS is saved.
Stage 1 entry burn shut down.
With the conclusion of that entry burn, SpaceX teams
Stage
now
2
turn
FTS is saved.
to
Both vehicles are on nominal trajectories.
Coming up next will be the single engine entry burn. A good confirmation there of nominal trajectories for both the first and second stages.
Stage 1 is transonic.
Booster traveling below the speed of sound now. Roughly 10 seconds to the start of the landing burn.
Stage 1 landing burn startup.
Stage 2 is in terminal guidance.
Landing leg deploy. Stage 1 landing confirmed.
And a good recovery for 1092.
MVAC shutdown.
Nominal park orbit insertion.
And with that good confirmation of a nominal parking orbit achieved, this upper stage will cruise now until T plus 53 minutes, 46 seconds. There will be a brief 1 second burn on that Merlin vacuum engine to circularize its orbit. Then the Starlink satellites on board will be deployed at about T plus 1 hour, 4 minutes, 53 seconds post liftoff. And we've got our launch replays ready for you. So let's go ahead and roll that tape. Starting with the fixed view here at the press site. Moving on to the wide camera view. Onto the turn basin next. And onto the tracker. And with our replays checked off, let's go ahead and turn to our mission stats as they currently stand. With a good liftoff and landing of the first stage booster tonight. That marked the 9th flight for, nope, actually, stand by. There we go. This was the 9th flight for Falcon booster, actually 1092. This is SpaceX's 580th Falcon 9 launch to date, the 163rd of the year so far. This is SpaceX's 515th Falcon booster reflight, with a launch of a booster that has flown at least once. This was SpaceX's 171st orbital launch within the last 365 days, the 298th orbital launch from SpaceX from this pad, and the 353rd overall orbital launch from this pad as well. Here's the bar chart representation of the launches so far this year compared to years past. Moving on to some recovery stats. This was the 137th good landing on the drone ship, a short fall of gravitas. That marked the 452nd SpaceX drone ship landing, the 551st SpaceX booster landing, and the 552nd overall booster landing as well. Finally, with some industry stats, this was the 107th orbital launch from Florida, the 172nd from U.S. soil, the 188th from U.S. rocket company, and the 305th orbital launch attempt around the world. There have been 6 orbital mishaps so far. Here is a look at the Cape launches as they currently stand, going back to 1957. And here's a look at the pie chart for missions around the globe. We're just double checking before we stepped into these stats. No confirmation at this point that the Series 2 rocket from Galactic Energy has launched yet. So tonight's flight of the Starlink 6-82 mission marks the 299th successful orbital launch around the world. And so whatever comes next and has success will be number 300. Of course, that will be more official, assuming successful deployment of the Starlink satellites coming up here in less than an hour. And with that, we're going to go ahead and wind down on our live coverage tonight. Want to thank our moderators in the chat who have been helping us out throughout the course of the broadcast. Big thanks to Rick Donner, Jeff Hansen, Astro Joe, and Aussie Space Girl for being with us this evening. Thanks to our photographers, Pete Carsons with Max Q Productions, as well as the rest of our photography team. You can see here on your screen and their handles on X. Our next pair of launches from here in Florida are coming up in the very early morning hours of Tuesday, the 16th. Looking at the flights, first of United Launch Alliance's Atlas V rocket on the Amazon Leo 4 mission for tech giant Amazon. And that'll be followed up by the Starlink 6-99 mission from Launch Complex 39A at the Kennedy Space Center. So if you haven't already, now's a great time to hit that subscribe button. If you are not already a subscriber to the channel, turn on notifications so that you'll be made aware when we start our broadcast, if there is a change to the T0 before we start our coverage. For all of us here at Spaceflight Now, I'm Will Robinson Smith. Remember, be good to yourselves, be good to others. We will see you next time, folks. And until then, bye-bye.